Thank you, worship team. Good morning. Wow, it's great to be worshiping together. It's great to be back. I was out of town last week, in case you were here. And I was thinking, this has been an emotional week for me because last weekend Marcia and I were out of town. We were up in upstate New York helping to get young Alex and Allegra married. I got a picture here. The happy couple, there you are. Some of you know Alex. Some of you know his mom, Kathy, and his grandmother, Betty, longtime members here. So that was an exciting time. And the Crawford family are family to Marcia and I. So great wedding, but emotional time. And then we came back Sunday, and then Tuesday I drove down to visit my mom, who lives in western North Carolina. It's the first time I'd been there since the hurricane came through. So that was just an emotional time, seeing all of that stuff. And then anticipating today. So this has been quite a ride for me and for many of you, and certainly for Elise, as we're here to honor her. Elise Bell Day, as I've been calling it for the last few weeks. There you go. One of the things that Elise wanted to do was she wanted to have an opportunity just to give a final message today, so she's going to do that in just a minute. It was funny, a couple of weeks ago we were in the office and we were chatting, and I made a comment of something about, there'll probably be a few surprises, and she kind of rolled her eyes at me, and she was like, well, I already know about the gift card, and I already know about the dinner. I don't think you're really going to be able to surprise me. And then a longtime friend, Vicki Harrington, came walking up, and back there, former member. And then Dave and Norma Blanton pulled up from South Carolina. And so so she's been surprised already. I think we got maybe a couple more to go. But anyway, it's going to be a great time. A couple of announcements before I turn it over to Elise. Our meal pack is next week. So if you're here and if you're online, I didn't get a chance to welcome you online. It's great to have you. We've even got some of our Kenyan friends, Joseph and Jennifer, joining us online. So welcome. Glad you're with us. But next week, we will not be having our regular services. We'll be packing meals. This entire space and our lobby and our other end of the building will all be transformed for Feed My Starving Children mobile pack. So we'll be here all weekend, setting up Friday, packing all day Saturday and into Sunday. If you haven't signed up, there's still slots to sign up. I think there's one completely full slot, but there are open spots in all the other packing sessions. We especially need, though, behind-the-scenes people. There's a separate sign-up on the Feed My Starving Children on the Meal Pack webpage. There's a separate sign-up for the behind-the-scenes. You scroll down just a little bit. You can use the QR code that's on the back of your seat there to get you to that link tree with all of those links. But go to that and help us with hospitality, just getting people registered and signed up and where they need to be, and some of the cleanup and setup and all of that stuff is where we especially need help for next weekend. So look forward to seeing you then. And then the next thing that's coming up right after Meal Pack is the election day. How many's will be happy for it to be over? Let me tell you, I just spent a week in one of the what they call the states that are swing state. Yeah, North Carolina is a swing state. I'm telling you, I could not watch TV the entire week I was there because it was just commercial after commercial, and I was just like, I'm done. But anyway, the election day. So we're going to be doing something that we did back in 2016. We couldn't do it in 2020 because of COVID, but in 2016, it was an election much like this one where we knew it was potentially going to be close. There was just a lot of anxiety around the election. And so what we did was we had a bunch of volunteers who showed up throughout the day in 2-hour shifts, and we just handed out coffee and Krispy Kreme donuts to people. Now, let me tell you, a Krispy Kreme donut makes everything better, right? It's like the British drinking tea, okay? It just makes it all fine. So we're going to do that again. And let me tell you, when we did this in 2016, we got calls and emails from people, and the election board called me and said, we got calls and emails from people saying we loved what that church did. They said we showed up, some of the voters said we showed up kind of nervous, not sure what was going to happen, a little bit scared in some cases. They said somebody handed me a cup of coffee and a donut, and I felt so much better. So we're going to do that again. We'll be handing out, I think last time we handed about 900 cups of coffee and 600 Krispy Kreme donuts. It may not be quite that many because they're already telling us early voting will probably have less turnout actually on the day of. But we're going to do that. So we need your help doing that if that's something you're interested in. If you're off that day or have some time before or after, work. We'd love to have you take one of those shifts. So you can, again, click that QR code in front of you. That'll take you to the link tree, and just click on that Sign Up Genius and come and help us hand out donuts. It's going to be a blast. Got it? Good. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Elise.
This happens every single time. So that's right. Sorry for those of you online. And I'm glad that you were here. So David's right. I got surprised. Vicki and her husband, David, picked me up the very first time I ever came to church when I was 16 years old. And it picked me up many times after that. So it is, where are you, Vicki? So, it's and I love your family, and it's such a pleasure that you're here. But the ones who really just did me in this morning is my family from South Carolina, David and Norma. You hear me talk about them all the time. I already had in my mind how I was going to refer to them on camera and say that they were watching. But now I don't have to, because they're right here. So, and I want to thank my mom and my sister for coming. I could not have made it through being me, and with all my issues and stuff, I could not have made it through all of this without them. So I'm very thankful. This is an emotional Sunday for me. Some of you might be like, but better times are coming. But I'm going to start off with a funny story just because I think we need it. It has been such a pleasure and privilege to be not just on staff at this church, but to be a part of this church. And so it's always been my goal to never embarrass this church, to never do anything that would make us look bad. And I feel like over the 22 years plus the time when I was just a member of the congregation, I feel like I've done that. With one exception. Some of you have heard this story, but it's a good story, so just bear with me. But I had, my parents moved to Gainesville in 2008, something like that. So they've been there a while. I didn't know anybody in Gainesville. I had gone to Africa, and I wanted to spend some time with my family and my 2-year-old nephew. He was 2 at the time. He's 17 now, so even I can do that math, 15 years ago. And I decided we were all to go out there and have dinner with them. And like I said, I didn't know anybody. And we had a lovely dinner, and we're walking outside. And my dad is holding hands with Eli because they were best friends. And when they got to the car, he let Eli's hand go and Eli took that as, now it's time to run through the cars out into traffic. So my dad starts to run after him, but my dad had really bad neuropathy and fell flat on his face, saying something Grandpa shouldn't say as he fell. And so I run, Bridget and Mom go to Dad, and I run out to Eli, and I grab him just in the nick of time, and I am giving him the riot act. You guys have never seen me yell like that. I mean, I've never yelled at you guys because you've never deserved it. But I'm yelling at him, and I'm doing the finger shaking because one reason I was just terrified that something could have happened to him, right? Well, this woman starts walking towards me, and she has this look on her face. And I'm like, oh, she's either upset because the man fell down, said something he shouldn't have said as he fell to the ground. I don't know what about that she's upset about. Or she's upset because this crazy woman is yelling at this sweet little child that's, very, very young. And I just kind of ignored her. And then this car came from the other direction, and the window rolls down. Elise, is that you? I don't know anybody in Gainesville. Yes, it's me. Hey, how are you? she said to the person, she had just had dinner with this person that was walking towards her, and she says, "Oh, hey, so-and-so, this is Elise Bell. She's the children's pastor at Fairfax Circle Church." I'm like, "Hey!" So I've tried really hard. I think that's the only time I shame the family, but anyways, I want to just spend a few minutes telling you what I've learned from this church. And so I'm going to start with the fact that going to this church, I had not been involved in a church before this. And so coming to this church at 16, the very first thing that I learned is my need for a forever relationship with Jesus, of what salvation meant, about what forgiveness meant, and being loved meant. And so after a year of learning that, I made a decision that I wanted to follow Jesus, and I got baptized. And I love this verse. In Titus 3:5a says, "He saved us not because of righteous things that we had done, because of his mercy." And I feel like that's what I had learned, was that I didn't have to do anything but show up, because I was deeply loved no matter what. And so why wouldn't I want to follow somebody that loved me so much and that promised me that we could be together forever in eternity? So that was the first thing I learned about what I needed to know, was what it meant to have a forever relationship with Jesus. And I'm so thankful for that. And I look at you guys today, and this is kind of what heaven's going to be like. When you think about that eternal life, is that we're all going to get to be together. And I think that that's so great. We're going to have these kind of reunions where we cry and hug. And so, I don't know, we might not cry. We'll be so happy. So anyways, that was the very first thing I learned, is that I needed Jesus and that I wanted to be a follower of Jesus. The next thing I learned from our pastor, Marvin Jennings, was the concept of grace. I started out in the youth group with a dear couple, Daryl and Sherry Wise, and they made a huge impact on my life. But they eventually went to be in Africa, which comes up later in this message, because that also had a huge impact on my life. But while I was still in the youth group, they had to hire another youth pastor. That youth pastor had gone through some really tragic things, and things that most people wouldn't have been able to handle very well. And with his wife had an aneurysm, and she survived, but then it was like he was not living with the same person. It was just a very difficult situation. And eventually it became evident that one of the ways that he was struggling with the whole situation and handling this whole situation was addiction. And a lot of churches would have just immediately fired a pastor that was struggling with addiction. But our pastor did not do that right away. Our pastor did everything that he could to help him, to support him, to say, we understand. Eventually, it was a lot more. All that love, sometimes addiction needs so much more than that. And so eventually, he did have to leave his position. But the amount of grace that Marvin showed him stuck in my 17, 18-year-old heart forever. I have never forgotten that. And I love this verse in 1 Peter 4:10 that says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. And the way that Marvin showed that grace changed who I was becoming as a young Christian. As I grew up in the church a little bit and graduated and started getting involved in student ministry, I started leading the puppet team, which Vicki knows well because her daughter was in there in the puppet team, and I don't know if anybody else here was involved in that or not, but it was the great experience of my life. I mean, not the greatest. Just bear with me. It was a great experience in my life. It helped shape me, is what I'm trying to say. It helped shape me as a pastor, as somebody who serves Jesus. So, but it was the first opportunity that I learned that Christians, we are saved, we are forgiven, but we are flawed. And sometimes you don't realize that as a brand new Christian, because you think that Christianity is bright and shiny and there's perfection involved. That's just not true. It is hard work being a Christian. It's a hard work being a follower of Jesus. But we are just not perfect. And unfortunately, that was shown to me in a hard way. We had a young man in the puppet ministry who was just difficult. He just was. And even one of the students came and said to me, he's just scary. And I didn't know, I was young, and I didn't know what to do with that. And I didn't know how to handle that. And I didn't handle it well. And I don't even to this day remember exactly what I did, but I would think that the biggest mistake that I made was that I just kind of withdrew instead of engaging, which is what you would hope for in children's ministry, in student ministry. I didn't engage, I pulled away. And I stopped giving him certain roles. And so I got called into the new youth pastor's office, and he says, "You're doing a great job, but." Don't you love that? But. And he told me, he said, the parents have had this parent has had some concerns about this. And I understood that. And I felt terrible about it. And so I said, well, I need to make this right. Because even as a young adult, you know when you need to make things right with people. So I went to the mother, and she says, "I'm not speaking to you." That shocked me. That was really hard for young me to understand or to absorb. And so, but again, we are not perfect. She was not perfect. I was not perfect. We made mistakes. So I went to, at the time we had deacons, I went to the chairman of the deacons. His son was also on the puppet team, so he kind of understood what was going on. And I said, I want to make this right with these people, but I think I'm going to need some help. And he was very glad to do that. And he set up a meeting, and I was so nervous. They didn't show up. They were that upset with me. And I then got a letter from them saying, "We're just kind of done with you in this whole situation." Listen, I don't think that I deserve that. I deserve the right to be able to ask for forgiveness, and I deserve the right to to ask for forgiveness and to say I was sorry. And they didn't give it to me. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying we can't do that to each other. We may be imperfect, but we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes with each other. We're going to hurt each other. We're going to disappoint each other. At least let the gift of forgiveness sink in at some point. And so I also, as much as I learned about how much I needed Jesus, as much as I learned how effective grace is, I also learned that when you don't forgive, it is painful. It's painful to all involved. So I love this verse in Colossians 3:13 that says, "Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has grievances against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you." We need to forgive each other. We're going to make mistakes. But that doesn't mean that we aren't everything that we want to be in Jesus, because we're just not perfect. And that's okay. So the next thing I learned is that God's plan for me is so much bigger than my plan for myself. And so when I was also in these early 20s, and this is when I was going to point to the camera and say that I had these great mentors and dear friends at our family, David, Norma, and I was going to wave to them. So now I'm just going to wave to you right now. And I had, at that early age, I had heard a speaker, Tony Campolo, give a challenge at a discussion that I went to, some kind of conference. And he challenged us about what it meant to be a global Christian. And I accepted that challenge. And David and Norma helped me to figure out what that meant in those early years of my life. But I didn't really know. I knew that what it meant in the sense that I was going to care about people around the world. I didn't know if I was going to go live around the world. I just didn't know what it meant. Well, Daryl and Sherry come back into the story at this point, and they come home on what's called a furlough, which means that they are taking a break from being in Africa, but they're still kind of working. They're sharing their stories, and it's not really a vacation, but they're getting to be with their church family and with their regular family. And Daryl saw what I was doing with the puppet team. And he said, you know, if you would be willing to come to Kenya and to teach people how to make and use puppets to tell others about Jesus, it would be a game changer. I was frozen. Go to Kenya? Not me. I can't do that. But I did. And I took Bob Hawes with me. Bill, some of you guys know Bill's son Bob. We went to Kenya. And we taught in 2 different towns, taught people how to make and use puppets for telling others about Jesus. My favorite story of that experience is that we went to an open-air market after our students had made their puppets. We went to an open-air market, and we were going to do a show, and we were going to share Jesus' love with people through these puppets at this thing. We were so crowded around, probably partly because of us being Americans, but also the puppets. The puppets just, people didn't know what to do with it. And so we left, and we didn't get to share. And I was so sad about that. But I got a letter from one of our students, and she said, you know what? We just kept going back. We just kept going back until people got used to the puppets, and then we shared how much Jesus loves us, and people listened. And somebody accepted Jesus right there and then. It was amazing. During that whole experience, Kenya got into my soul the way that I just can't even explain. The way that made some of you roll your eyes, because like, oh, she's talking about Kenya again. And it also put just a thirst in me to be able to serve in other ways. In between that time and the time that I got to go back, I went to visit David and Norma in Ecuador and Costa Rica, and even though those were not mission trips, it exposed me to what's going on in developing countries. For those of you, I'm not going to tell this story, but they are the ones that I got stranded in the jungle with. It's a whole thing. We'll tell you later. But then I also spent a month in post-war Bosnia doing children's ministry. And then when I came back, though, and started serving this church, my heart was still beating for Kenya, and I didn't know what to do with that. And so a friend of mine from seminary invited me to come to Botswana and do some teaching, and Anna and Mary Beth went with me, and a lovely lady named Phyllis Johnson, great lady, and we had an amazing time. And I would be brave enough to say that probably had a huge impact on both young 18-year-old Anna and 18-year-old Mary Beth. But Kenya still had not left my heart. So fast forward 2006, and I'm at a children's pastors conference, and I'm looking at all the different booths, and I walk up to this one that gives you an opportunity to serve overseas teaching children's ministry. And I said, I think I might be interested in that. It was called Kids at Heart International. And I said, where would I go? And they said, where do you want to go? I said, I want to go to Kenya. They said, we will send you to Kenya. And so that year, Virgil went with us. He was on that trip, and a small group of us went on that trip. And 3 years later, another group of us went on that trip. I think Carolyn was on that one. And it was just amazing to be able to serve in that capacity. But I really thought that was as big as it was going to get, that we were going to get to have these trips. And then we came back from that second trip. And I watched Regina look at our pastor and eyeball to eyeball tell her why this church needed to be involved in the work of Kenya. And she had more influence with him because I was white noise at that point where Kenya was concerned. And it wasn't that he didn't respect what I was saying. It's just that David is one of those pastors that, as much as he respects his staff, he really wants to respect your leadership. So when Regina said, we got to go, David put a team together, and I think Kathy was on that. Somebody else, some of you others might be, I don't have my glasses on. I don't know who's where anywhere. But he went. They went, and a partnership. I couldn't have started a partnership. A partnership started through that. It was bigger than what I could have ever imagined that God would do with my life. I got to be a part of the beginning. But you know what? I'm not a part of the end. The end is bigger than me. Isn't that amazing how God does that? I love this verse in Romans that says, in Romans 8:28, says, and we know that all things work, that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I did what I was supposed to do. Regina did what she was supposed to do. David did what he was supposed to do. Many of you did what you were supposed to do. And I am leaving this church, and that program isn't even going to be close to going away. That partnership is still going to be here. I was only needed for the beginning. God has plans for us that we do not understand, that are so much bigger than we can imagine for ourselves. I never would have imagined this. And it is one of the greatest things I've seen God do in my life. I'm so thankful that he knows better than I do, that he has a great plan for my life. And I hold on to that tight because I don't know exactly what the next step is. I have some ideas, I have some goals, I have some dreams, but I'm holding on tight to that hand that knows more than I do and has a great plan for my life. The next thing I learned in this church that I want to pass on to you is that parents, you've got this. It has been the joy of my life to be with these little people right here. And some of you. Yeah. Oh, you're not laughing at me. I thought, it's okay. It would have been okay if you were. Some of you guys, Hayden, I'm so thankful, and Lene, that you came here this morning. I can't start saying names or I'll start crying and I'm going to forget somebody, but parents, as much of a privilege as it has been, and this goes for you grandparents too, I want you to listen closely. What I have been able to offer to your children is an excellent hour a week of knowing what it means to fall in love with Jesus. And that's not going to change. They're still going to get an excellent hour a week of knowing that. You have all the other hours. So your influence as a parent, as a grandparent, as an aunt, as an uncle, as a friend, it matters. And let me just tell you, you're like, oh, but you went to seminary. I got a D in Old Testament history. Okay? I got lots of A's and B's, but there was too much memorization in that. If I can do it, you don't have to know all those things to be effective. Here's what you need to know. You need to know what I've just said. Jesus loves you. You decided to have a relationship with Jesus because you understood that Jesus loves you. And then understanding that and sharing that testimony with your kids. If you have not shared that with your kids, you need to. If you're a grandparent and you haven't shared that with your kids, you need to. Because that's going to be more powerful than any object lesson that I would have come up with in my crazy brain. And I also want to say that the best thing any parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle can say to a child is, I am praying for you. They may roll their eyes. It may not matter but it's going to matter. It matters. So, and it's not too late if you're thinking, well, yeah, I guess it's not too late. And I hope that you will realize that we have been partners through this whole experience. I didn't do this by myself. You guys, you've got it. I want to read this verse in Deuteronomy. It's chapter 11, verses 18 through 19. You shall therefore lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall teach them to your children, talking of them when you are sitting in your house, and when you are walking by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. That Jesus is such a part of you that it just comes out. So you might have to do a little bit of homework. Besides coming to church, you might read your Bible or pray. But the biggest thing that you need to do is remember that you just being a follower of Jesus in front of your kids, don't hide that. Share that with them. Share what Jesus means to you. And then let us do what we do. Let's continue to be partners. One of the last things I have learned in this church is the importance of small group. And I've been a part of some great small groups. In fact, my current small group, John and Nancy drove here. John and Nancy, where are you? Yeah. I mean, sure, David and Norma drove the furthest, but they're family. John and Nancy drove because they're part of my small group. Because a good small group doesn't just study God's word together. A good small group goes through life together with you. And so if you do nothing else in life, find a great small group. A small group that will pray for you, a small group that cares. In our small group, we spend as much time telling each other what's going on in our lives and praying together as we do studying God's word. And I have no regrets about that as the leader. Because and we start with that first. Because I think a lot of times if you've gone long in the lesson, you're hurrying through that part. And then you're missing the gift of what small group truly is. Going through life together. Hebrews 10:25 says, don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. That's where you get that encouragement. And it's not just, can you pray for me because I stubbed my big toe? Which, trust me, I've said that to my small group, and we have shared this but we've gone deeper, and we can continue to go deeper of, can you please pray for me as I try to live out what we've talked about? As I try to really let Jesus be in charge of this part of my life. Small group, when you can have that kind of community, which I learned in this church, is life-changing. So, the small group that I've been in the longest is the small group I'm in with staff. Because even though I've had some great small groups and they have been tremendous, one time I had this wacky idea back when I was in the Lindley small group, and I wanted to go and have this communal housing thing, and it was a wacky idea, I know that. But I really thought at the moment, it was a great idea, and I really thought that might be something God was calling me to do. And so I had an opportunity to go hear something about it, And that Jeff Lindley went with me because he was a part of my small group, and he knew that God was calling me to do something that may or may, and it didn't work out. And sometimes God says no. But that's what small group is about. Your small group shows up for you. Again, tremendous small groups. But the small group I've been in with staff has been everything. Because listen, we love you, but we have sat with you when you have hurt, and that has been a privilege to us. We have gone to weddings, and we have done things, and sometimes we can't share our burdens of how much we love you with anybody but each other. Sometimes we can't even say it to our small group, even though it should always be what's said in small group stays in small group. But it is a special bond when we are in the trench, when you're in the trenches with somebody. And so I've been in the trenches with some great people. And some of them are here, Hayden and Carolyn. But the two that I have been in the trenches the longest with are I almost forgot your name. Is Susan and David. And listen, I'm a little worried about David. And here's why. David will no longer have anybody to chit-chat with him about nonsense. David will no longer have anybody that spends the last 15 minutes of their workday looking for their keys. And most importantly, David will not have anybody to roll their eyes. I mean, nobody has the eye roll down. And it's not that I disrespect him, because I don't. I respect him more than anybody. But even people you respect a lot are sometimes like, what did you just say? What do you want me to do? I wouldn't trade David for anything. But somebody might need to come in every now and then and just roll your eyes, look for your keys. As Susan said, be sassy. I know, she said I was sassy. What? So I'm a little bit worried that he's going to have this big deficit in his life. But I wouldn't trade them. And so I have something for each of them. I've been trying to not buy presents for people, but instead give people just a little piece of me. And so I do want to take this opportunity to give this to Susan. Susan's mother, Ray, was so influential in my life. And she taught me how to cross stitch, and she helped me make this. And it's the perfect gift for Susan. It says, I keep a copy of your smile always in my heart. And so I want her to have this. And I love you very much. Ooh, okay. And if I get through this next part without crying, then where's Melissa Bohe? Then I win. She said, you're never going to make it through that sermon without crying. Okay. But when I went the first time in the 80s to Kenya, we came back, and one of the things that you may not know, well, especially because you probably don't know him, Bob Haas, is he's a tremendous artist. And he painted this picture of what 1980s Kenya looked like. And it has hung in every house I've been in, even in my dorm room in seminary. And I want David to have it because I started, he continued. We don't know who's going to end it. And the frame fell off today. We'll fix all that later. But I want you to have this, David, and I love you very much.
Love you too.
Ooh.
It's not your face marker, is it?
No. So the last thing that I have learned from this church, and thank God did not get fired for it. Were you a little nervous about the things I might say today? Because I had no guardrails. I could have said anything, because what are you going to do? Not invite me to the lunch you prepared? But I've been good. I've been good. But David always says when he has a reputation of saying before I get up and do a sermon the following week that she sets things on fire, she has water and blah, blah, blah. So today I'm just going to make it sound like he's been telling the truth. So Mickey's going to help me. And one of the things I just want to say that I learned about Jesus is that, remember, you got to take those off first because that's the second part. Because remember, first is without Jesus. So the first thing, the last thing I want to share is that life with Jesus is just more fun. It just is. It doesn't mean that it's easy. I've gone through some very hard things in my life. But it does mean that I have felt the presence of Jesus through those hard things. I've also seen things, as you said, Jesus makes things so much better. And there's nothing better than these kids. So the first thing we're going to do is show, come on up here, buddy. Mickey was the first one to raise his hand when I said I need to do this. So thank you for being willing to do that, buddy. And I want you to go ahead and hit that bubble. And it just kind of burst, right? Now put the, and life is harder without Jesus. And things don't always turn out the way we want them, even with Jesus. But sometimes when we add Jesus to the equation, you ready? Come on, Jesus. Oh, try again. Bounce it, bounce it. Oh, thanks, Mom. So, good job, buddy. Now, some of the praise team people, they're like, she's going to spill soap on the equipment. I don't think I am, but I'm going to put this right here. Nobody step on it. We'll clean that up later. So, I've learned a lot from this church. I've learned that I need Jesus. I've learned what grace looks like. I've learned that we're imperfect and forgiveness is crucial. I've learned that God's plan for me is bigger than the plan I have for myself. And thank goodness, because it was so much better. I learned that my work was in a partnership with parents. And I learned that I always want people to go through life with, that will pray for me. And I've learned that Jesus is fun. And that doesn't mean that life is easy. So I hope if you have not learned those things, you will have opportunities to learn to claim them in the future. Am I praying or are you praying? So thank you so much. And thanks for coming to my TED Talk, sermon, whatever you want to call it. It's been a pleasure.
I wasn't worried about anything she was going to say because I get the last word. And I have a lot more stories I can tell about Elise than she can about me. So, but I'm not going to do that. But I do just want to say it's been an honor to serve as a partner with Elise. And one of the things that Elise would always refer to me as that just drove me up the wall was her boss. She would introduce me as her boss. She would tell people I'm her boss. I don't view myself as anybody's boss. I've had to have those boss conversations with staff every now and then, but very rare. I view myself as a partner, and Elise has been a true ministry partner. You can't imagine how great it is to be able to leave like I did just last week, and be gone for a week or 2 weeks vacation, whatever, and just know that our staff is here to lead and to keep things going and to do things well. She's one of the most professional ministers you'll ever meet. And so it's just been an honor to serve with her for the last 22 years. Elise has worn a lot of hats since she's been here. And a lot of them you don't even know she was wearing unless you were engaging with her in that way. But she started out leading a preschool that we were running during the week. She became the first ever and only children's pastor, professional staff children's pastor we've ever had. She served as our missions pastor. She talked a lot about that. And she's done it for 22 years, right? And that's huge. When I came here 30 years ago, the statistics for a senior pastor like me staying in a church was 2 years. And the average stay for an associate pastor was a year and a half. So the fact that Susan has been here for over 20 years, well over, 30 years, and I mean, and it just says a lot about our staff and about our church. It's one of the reasons this is such a healthy church is because of the longevity of our leadership. It makes all the difference in the world. We have not had to navigate a lot of the struggles that a lot of churches have had to do who have that higher turnover rate in their staff. One of the people that Elise mentioned, and I'm so thrilled that I got to know them and I'm friends with them now, is Joseph and Jennifer. I got an email several years ago from somebody I didn't know, some college students from James Madison University who lived in the Northern Virginia area, and she emailed me and she said, I just spent a semester abroad teaching at a place called Tanya outside of Nairobi in Kenya, and I was talking to the directors there, Joseph and Jennifer, and I mentioned I was from Fairfax, and Joseph said, "Oh, do you know Fairfax Circle Church?" like everybody in Fairfax knows Fairfax Circle Church. And she's like, "I don't." And he said, "Would you go back and just ask how they're doing?" And so she gets back and she tracks us down online and finds my email and tells me who she is and where she's come. And I'm sitting in the office reading this email, and Elise is in her office, and I said, "Hey, you ever heard of some guy named Joseph Kigunda?" And she's like, "Joseph, I've had tea in his house." And she started telling me the story. We met with this young lady for coffee. She told us all about her semester there teaching at Tanya. And then we reconnected after all of those years. And this church actually helped send Joseph to school when he was here for his master's degree. Joseph would come back and visit here, and the church took care of him when he was a young man, when he was on break. So Joseph wanted to say a few words to Elise today. So take a look at this.
Hello, my name is Joseph Kigunda. I'm born in Meru, in the eastern slopes of Mount Kenya. I left Kenya to study in the US. I was a student at the University of Rochester, upstate New York, where I was an assistant by the church, Fairfax Circle Baptist Church. In that church is where I met a college student by the name Elise Bell. Elise and Christopher, they used to take me during the vacation and then take me around in Washington, D.C. To know about the life and the American way. And they really made me feel welcome. And they enabled me, to kill the homesick when I was out there in the US. So this time, now that Elise, you are going on retirement, we have walked a long journey, faith journey with you. During even that time when you went to Meru to do a puppetry ministry, during the time when missionary Dale Weiss and Sally were in Meru, and you have done a lot. I remember you used to take me around the Gadadet College, which is a university now, and how you used to take me to places with Christopher, and this other lady who was doing a training to educate the deaf. You have done a lot, and you are so faithful in your work. I believe even the church will miss your service when you go on retirement because you are a faithful work. You have also managed to come to visit Tanya when we started Tanya, together with a group of ladies from the church, Regina, and we also came with Marsha. And we are so grateful, even for the entire church, the way you are helping us here when you are dealing with the children. We feel honored, and I know Elise, I'm wishing you well. During the time after you have rested enough, I'm inviting you to come to Kenya so that we can have an opportunity of taking you to Meru, the place where you did your puppetry ministry, the place where we are born and lived for most of our life.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been a pleasure to partner with them. We continue to help support financially what they're doing at Tanya, and all of that is a big part of because Elise went when she was young to do that puppet ministry there, and now you've got to go back because you just got Joseph just invited you back. I'll go with you. Another person that wanted to say hello to Elise is Pastor Charles. From Kenya. And again, I'm so glad that Elise went because she came back and she said, you have to meet Pastor Charles. You would really love Pastor. You and Pastor Charles are so much alike. And she was right. I've gotten to know Pastor Charles, and he and I consider him a dear, dear friend. So Pastor Charles would like to say a few words.
Greetings to all of you, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to join you as we celebrate our sister Elise Bell's retirement. My name is Reverend Charles Mulema Kinusu. I am the General Overseer of Gospel Centers International, formerly known as Nairobi Gospel Center. And on behalf of our church, I send greetings to all of you again, and I want to wish my sister Elise Bell a wonderful retirement. I got to know Sister Elise Bell in the early 20s when she came to Nairobi, Kenya, with a team from Kids at Heart International to train our Sunday school teachers on how to do children ministry. And I can say, since that time, God has been so gracious to our church. We were having an attendance of close to 120 kids then. Today, we have a very wonderful structured children's church with very vibrant teachers who borrowed a lot from the expertise and the teachings of our sister, Elise Bell. We are currently registering close to 1,500 kids that attend our church every Sunday morning. Through Sister Elise Bell, again, we were able to meet with Pastor David Magnet, the pastor of Fairfax Baptist Church, with a team of other leaders from that church. And by God's grace, again, through that partnership, we were able to set up their side-by-side ministries, a compassion ministry that ministers to children who are vulnerable and kids who are in need. I want to say again, thank you, Sister Elise Bell, for that connection. We've been able over the years to support close to over 60 to 70 families through that ministry. Kids growing from babies. As I speak right now, there are some who've gone through university, and we even some now who are volunteering their service, some serving in our church and elsewhere. It is through the efforts of this great woman of God that today we can look back and thank God for the many, many wonderful things that God has done through our church, through this great partnership. I want right now on behalf of Gospel Centers International, Nairobi Gospel Centers Itwa, to send our warmest greetings to you and to wish you well, Sister Elise, as you go for your retirement. I believe and I trust that one of these fine days we shall be able to meet again. And if we don't, when Jesus comes, we shall have so much to talk about and many stories to tell about this relationship that we've had over the years. Thank you once again and again. May the Lord bless you as you celebrate your retirement at this particular time. God bless you.
Amen. Yeah. And the interesting thing about gospel centers is it didn't just grow from 120 kids to now 1,500 kids. They're planting churches in every county in Kenya. I think it's 46 counties, something like that. They're opening a church this weekend. I think they have about 20 already open. And there are children's ministries in each one of those churches as well, and that's a part of Elise's legacy. You know, when you pastor, you have no idea this side of heaven the impact that you have because so much happens and you just don't know. But yeah, here's one of my favorite stories is one of the things we started doing after we finished the Kids at Heart work, training leaders there, was we started working with Uncharted Waters Sports Ministry. If you were here in our church, we used to do a sports camp with kids here. We've done them in D.C. With some partnerships we had there. And we went international with them. We went to Kenya. We had a young man named Ryan who had a vision for Kenya and sports ministries there and how it could be used to disciple and evangelize kids. And so our team took the first sports camp ministry to to Kenya. We worked in Nairobi there at Gospel Centers with Pastor Charles, and then they took a team at the second week out to Mombasa, which is on the coast of Kenya, and they were expecting about 100 pastors and leaders to be there to get trained in how to do this, and 500 showed up. And there was a pastor there. His name was Bishop Charles, and Bishop Charles caught the vision. He saw this, and he just knew the impact it could have. And so he took the material and translated it all into Swahili, and he began going around the entire country teaching what we had taught him to teach, what our team that Elise led had taught him to teach. He taught over 100,000 leaders how to use that, and over 1 million kids have heard the gospel and have been discipled because of that one trip that our church led with Uncharted Water Sports Ministry. So when I tell you Elise's legacy is huge, and it's broad, and it's deep, I can't understate that. It's incredible what she's been able to do in her lifetime, serving in ministry, serving through this church and through so other many ministries. There are kids who know Jesus because of Elise. We've baptized, just in the last couple of months, we baptized almost a dozen people, and Elise had an impact on every one of those lives. There are families that are healthier. In some cases, there are families and marriages that are still intact because of the ministry that Elise had. There are children here and around the world that are being served and are in a better place because of her ministry. And so I am thankful for her, and I'm thankful for you allowing her to serve here and for following her leadership all of these years. I'm going to ask Melissa and Ellie to come. They've got a couple of quick presentation to make, and then we'll have our word of prayer, and then we'll be dismissed.
Sorry. Okay, so we just collected some money for you, just for moving expenses, to treat yourself. I'm sure you're going to take lots of people out to coffee and just be you. But it's a lot of money, so I might give it to your sis, because you want to focus on seeing everybody today. You're very welcome. And yes, you should.
I did say I didn't want to talk, but we also made you a book, a photo book with almost 1,000 photos from your time at FCBC. So there's just lots of pictures, which everybody can look at. We're going to have it at the lunch. And we also have some pages in the back that says, like, we love you, Miss Elise. So we'll have pins over there. And if you want to just write a quick, I already got it started. I had some volunteers get it started. So you can just write a quick note to her and just express your thankfulness and your love for her, so she can take this with her and remember all the good times.
Super. Thanks to both of you.
I wanted to put a picture of you with like a bunch of kids, but unfortunately a lot of those were taken like, 20, 15 years ago, and they are not high resolution enough to blow up this big, so I had to use a recent one.
Okay, so I want to thank everybody for being here. I am going to close this in prayer, but I do want to give you some instructions before we get ready to leave and head over for lunch. If you're staying for lunch, we invite you to stay. So lunch will start in about 15 to 20 minutes. Our volunteers who are heading all of that up, they wanted to be in this service, and so they said, tell everybody they're going to have to wait a little bit because we're going to be in the service, and then we're going to leave, which they're leaving now. And they're going to set that stuff up, okay? So we have tables and chairs set up in the upstairs skylight room. So if you're a guest, you're not sure where that is, you can go out the sidewalk, down to the next set of double doors, and back in is the easiest way to get there. So that'll be in about 15, 20 minutes. So you can hang out here, you can go over there and grab a seat, and we'll announce when food is ready. The food is downstairs in what pre-COVID was our kids zone. and pre-Kid Zone, it was our fellowship hall. So depending on when you were in our church and all that, that's you know those names and know where that is. But it's downstairs. There's stairs. There's elevator from the skylight room that will get you there. The other thing I'll say is we're pretty sure we have plenty of food. But when I was a student pastor, I'd always say get one helping until everybody's had some. Okay, so heed those words. And we will have, once everybody gets settled and everything over there, we've got a video that just captures some of the time that Elise has spent here that we want to show. So we'll show that while we're eating, and we'll open it up to anybody who just wants to share a few comments or a great story or something about Elise. We'll give you that opportunity to do that over lunch. Okay, everybody on the same page there? Okay, let's go to God in prayer real quick. God, we just thank you for this day, for Elise Bell Day, that it's a day to not only celebrate her and honor her and her ministry here, but to honor you and what you've done through her life and through her ministry. And we do thank you for the legacy that she has, not just at Fairfax Circle Church, but the legacy that she has around the world because of the work that she's done. And we know that you still have more things for her to do, and so we just look forward to knowing what that looks like in the future. I do pray that you would just bless her today as she just has conversations with people. I pray for her over the next few weeks and months to come as she just acclimates to this transition and to being in a new place in life. And I just pray that it would just be a true blessing to her. And I just thank you for everyone who's here to honor her and to celebrate her. And I just pray that everything that we do today would be to do that, to celebrate Elise and to honor you in the process. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.